The tariffs on Canada and Mexico start tomorrow, with Canada's retaliating with tariffs of our own against the U.S. Joining us now to discuss this and more is Lisa Daftari, our U.S. correspondent from the Foreign Desk in Los Angeles. Good to have you with us, Lisa. The White House says Canada has misunderstood the tariff order as a trade war, while Mexico is serious. Did you want to unpack that a bit for us?
It's interesting, right? So Donald Trump is using a tactic, and it's a tactic of deterrence, and it's a tactic to bring our friends, our enemies, our trade partners, our potential trade partners to a place where American boundaries are physical and non-physical are respected. So that would mean, our northern boundary, our southern boundaries, trade, many of our companies going overseas and doing business in other places, wanting to bring them back home. So that's tariffs. Tariffs are economic just pressure on these different entities, but the different nations, different actors are responding differently. So far, we've had 2 weeks of a Trump presidency. And what have we seen? We have seen, Panama back down from trading or having a special deal with China. We've seen Colombia back down. We have seen, obviously a deal between Hamas and Israel for now. We shall see how that goes, and we can talk about that a bit later. But now Canada and Mexico, our northern and southern neighbors. And in the last few hours, we saw Mexico respond to the tariffs and say, please give us a pause on the tariffs in exchange for, we'll put 10,000 soldiers at the border. Well, why couldn't they do this before? We have so many migrants flooding into our nation right now, so many dangerous migrants, a lot of them obviously being well-intentioned. The fact is we can't absorb the number, even the well-intentioned ones. And for that reason, we do have a crisis here on our hands. So Donald Trump's theory is that, well, if I put the pressure on Canada and Mexico, they should understand it as let's work together, and it's not a tariff war as Canada is perhaps taking it. So that's
Okay,
what
so we need to read between the lines and see what Trump is really after, perhaps. Now, he doesn't seem worried about the Canadian counter tariffs, to be honest. I mean, at least, you look at him, he goes, yeah, whatever. I mean, now, I would guess that the price of gasoline probably will be going up, though, fairly soon, in the U.S. So, and again, we were seeing a pause for Mexico. So how long do you think these tariffs will last? Is it possible that, I mean, again, Trump's talking about illegal immigrants and drugs going across the border, right? That's why he's doing this, right? Now, the stats say 99% of those issues are from Mexico, only 1% from Canada. So maybe, is it possible that Trump's tone could change if Canada were to get in gear and put much more heavy-duty, I guess, border patrols in place? We've done some, and of course we have an upcoming election. So, I mean, if we end up with a conservative government, will things change?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I think more than anything, with regards to Canada, and I don't want to speak for the president, but from what my perspective is that it's more of a positioning. If you are in line with us, if you want to cooperate with us, therefore these tariffs won't be an issue. Donald Trump's in a very, very tough position, challenging position with regards to the U.S. economy as well. Many people would say Donald Trump got elected because of the economy, right? People want to see low gas prices. People want to see low prices at the supermarket. People want to have, just a better economy overall. Can't afford just living here in Los Angeles is a prime example of that. So in the interim, the government, the Donald Trump administration has warned that prices may go up here in the United States. Obviously, the markets are responding this morning with the uncertainty that we're seeing. We're seeing, obviously, the prices haven't gone down. I mean, it's only been 2 weeks, but really the way that he delivered that message that, the economy will improve and X, Y, and Z. But this is all perhaps the curve that we have to tolerate in order to get the country back on track. And that is the message that is coming from the White House right now.
Right. And President Trump also indicating that he's going to be soon slapping the European Union with tariffs. So how far is he going to go with this, right? Does Trump think he can, take on the whole world, I guess, and come out as the winner? I mean, logic says, over time, that's probably not going to happen. But again, maybe he's just, using this, when it works, and then he'll adjust as needed, as things unfold.
Yeah, and I think that that's a pretty good assessment of how this will go down. Look, Trump is trying to get the country back on track, and it has gone very far off track. And everywhere you look, whether it's the Russia-Ukraine war, the wars in the Middle East, the terror proxies going wild and even shooting at our own assets, American assets in the Middle East, the Houthis in Yemen, for example, or insurgencies in Iraq and Syria, which continue, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the list goes on. We haven't been able to control the centrifuges from spinning in Iran, and again, the list goes on and on. So he's tackling these issues one by one. Europe not working together with the United States. Really, everything is off track, and the way that he sees that this will move forward is to bring back what the United States is known for, and that's capitalism. We incentivize, we will provide opportunity for those who will play along and pay their fair share. I remember watching television in New York when I was living on the East Coast and watching local news, and Donald Trump, who was just the local millionaire, would come on TV and would say, this one and that one, they're not paying their fair share. We shouldn't be paying for the UN. We shouldn't be paying for NATO. We shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do that. And that was long before he announced his run for presidency. This is what he has always believed. This is what he thinks is a major problem with our economy, with our foreign policy, with the way that we deal with our friends and foes. So he is trying to get that all back on track. And really, it's only been 2 weeks. The amount of reaction and the amount that they've been able to move the needle in just 2 weeks, when most of his appointees haven't even been sworn in yet, is truly amazing. So I do think deterrence will work in many cases, and when it doesn't, then he can tweak as needed.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling how fast things are changing. I mean, again, pulling out of the World Health Organization, that got some attention, you know what? And well, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's probably a good move. We'll see, if other nations, follow that as well. Now, on the Panama Canal issue you mentioned earlier, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio meeting with Panama's President Mulino. Now, he's saying he's willing to review some of the agreements they have with Chinese companies. These are signed agreements. I think some of them are like 25 years long. So I don't know, what that means to review. Is he going to somehow back out of them? I mean, they're signed. What can he do?
Right. And I think, again, it's the positioning, right? So Marco Rubio, first hours on the job, hops on a plane, touches down in Panama, and you see the optics. You see him going there and asking for a meeting, and the tagline that we're seeing everywhere: promises made, promises kept, where at least that conversation with the Panamanian leader leads to, well, we will do whatever is best, and really realign themselves with the United States. That's the goal of all of this, and it can't happen overnight, to your point, right? A lot of these deals are multi-year, or they're already in progress. It's a positioning. It's a positioning that we need to realign, and we have to get, especially our neighbors, especially the ones that are economically vital, like Panama, back on track to work together with the United States.
Yeah, well, it'll be very interesting to see what happens there. I mean, it's nice to hear, too, from Trump, hey, I don't think we're going to need to use troops. And that was, I figured that all along. But, I guess it's one of those tools you have in your belt, right? Now, more Israeli hostages being returned. Actually, speaking of hostages, of course, the hostages coming back from Venezuela as well. That was, a nice surprise, right? But again, the ceasefire continuing, more hostages returned. Israeli PM Netanyahu not terribly happy about that exchange, how it was handled, and he is going to be meeting with President Trump this week. Any insight on that?
So very important that he's meeting with Donald Trump this week. I think this shows a true pivot from what we saw with the Biden White House, where they were trying to really straddle these two lines to say, well, we need a Palestinian state, in the moments where there are still attacks, terrorist attacks coming from Gaza, coming from the West Bank, coming from Hezbollah, and to talk about Palestinian state was kind of tone deaf. It created, this distance between Israel and the White House, and it also tied Israel's hands in with respect to retaliation and what it needed to do to eradicate Hamas. So that meeting, I think, will be again a very important optic. It'll be obviously very constructive. The two have a relationship. They work together on the Abraham Accords. They work together to move the embassy in Trump's first administration. So that's very, very important. With regards to the deal that was struck, again, that was days before Trump was sworn in as president. Very interesting because his envoy, Steve Witkoff, did go down to Doha. He was part of the negotiations. That deterrence and that positioning from the United States was very integral in striking that deal. But now, obviously, can we trust Hamas? The way that the hostages have been returned, walking through the mobs of thousands of supporters of Hamas, it makes it very difficult for people like myself who do talk about the innocent Palestinian people who deserve better than Hamas leading them. It makes that case very difficult when you're seeing so many of the Palestinian people support Hamas, but to take these innocent civilian hostages, so a young woman who had nothing to do with this war, was not a soldier, was just trying to get back home, or an American hostage, walking through these mobs, fearing their lives, and being humiliated on stage before being given back to Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu obviously being very, very upset about this, and a lot of bait and switch, a lot of double talk coming from Hamas. Again, they're a terror organization. They have been treated like a sovereign state because of the position that we're in, but they should not be. And then we should always remember that they are a terror organization, not to be trusted.
Yeah, absolutely. We lose sight of that so quickly, it seems. Now, Arab countries rejecting Trump's proposal to move Palestinians from Gaza into Egypt and Jordan. Interesting. So why the pushback on that? Well, don't want them here. I mean, I get it. In one sense, they want to say, okay, this land belongs to them, and so they should stay there. But wouldn't it be helpful to take a lot of the refugee load off of that situation, at least to some degree, partially? But it's like an absolute refusal. Why?
Right. So we've seen this before, where
Yeah.
they wash their hands of any responsibility of the Palestinians and refuse to take them in. They want Israel and the global community to deal with this crisis. They want that to be on them and not to be an economic or security burden on Egypt or Jordan. Look, at the end of the day, when you do look at these more moderate Arab states, they don't want a terrorism problem. They may keep their mouths shut. It's not they're not Zionists. It's not that they support Israel, but they want Israel to deal with the terrorism problem. They just don't want to inherit it. And with regards to the women and children, why don't you take them in? If you're calling them refugees, take 15 years, they're saying, to build Gaza again. Why not take them in? Why not? So Donald Trump is very confident that he will get them to take them in. He did say it's going to happen despite the pushback from the Arab states. Saudi Arabia doubling down and saying Saudis support Egypt and Jordan's refusal not take them in. So we shall see what kind of deal can be struck to get them to take them in and to really come up with outside of the box solutions to this problem. Look, the Middle East has suffered long enough from the same dead end between the Palestinians and the Israelis. It's not going to work. They have never had proper leadership. You can't have terrorists making demands from the global community to fix this issue. So we have to think of outside the box ideas. And I think the Abraham Accords were a great outside the box solution to moving forward. Now we have to deal with this issue because the Abraham Accords sidestepped the Palestinian issue. Now we have to deal with it. So we shall see what they come up with and whether Donald Trump will be successful in this solution that he's come up with now.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what happens out of these talks with the Israeli Prime Minister. By the way, Elon Musk, just briefly, the chair of DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, claims that they just saved $1 billion by canceling 104 DEI contracts. So, man, there's just so much stuff happening. And of course, you're hearing a lot of stuff from the left complaining about that, but I'm guessing that's going to be continuing. He's also alleging that payment approval officers at the Treasury were instructed always to approve payments, even to known fraudulent or terrorist groups. That's really, really interesting to hear that. If that's happening, I would think there'd be a lot of upset Americans, as they should be, and, will he be able to clean that up?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, this office that Donald Trump created with Elon Musk at the helm, long time coming. I mean, it's so necessary to clean up all of this excess and all of these made up, fraudulent funds and just create wasting taxpayer money. I mean, this is such a bipartisan issue or nonpartisan issue, depending on how you want to phrase it. All Americans should want the government to save money when it's going to just frivolous causes that could be spent on other things right now, like fixing the economy, like getting the migrants settled. There's so much homelessness that's rampant everywhere, crime, the fentanyl crisis. There's really so much. And when you look at so many of these funds, I mean, some of them are just so ridiculous. I was taking a look the other day, and it's really just absurd. So we're very, very grateful that this is something that will be ongoing. I know the left will complain about everything that Trump does. They will phrase it in a special way. They have the legacy media writing headlines that, frame it in a certain way. But these are all things that will help Americans in the long run. Absolutely.
Yeah, no one likes to see money wasted, especially if it's coming from your own pocket, right? So, hey, Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Lisa Daftari, our U.S. correspondent from the Foreign Desk in Los Angeles.